The spookiest time capsules ever uncovered. Let's dive in. Starting us off at number 10 is a locked box. One might venture to say that the Egyptian pyramids are kind of like the OG time capsule. I mean, there are tons of rumors about things that were hidden deep inside the head of the Sphinx, and who knows, it could have been where we got the idea to start this phenomenon in the first place. Well, if not as a whole, it seems like that may have been Atlanta University's former president Thornwell Jacobs' inspiration. Buried in 1940, it was modeled after a cell that one might find in an Egyptian pyramid, and inside the gigantic vault lies items that have been deemed crucial to our civilization thus far. Although, considering it was sealed prior to the release of Spice Girls Wannabe, I have some provisions that I would like to make. Mementos such as classic works of film and literature, all the books of faith, the original script of Gone with the Wind, a sealed bottle of Budweiser, and a typewriter are said to be kept inside. But what is the scary part, I'm sure you're asking? Well, it seems Mr. Jacobs had an inkling that it would be found by aliens. So at the front of the crypt lies a language integrator, which is apparently a machine intended to help the aliens who open the crypt with our mother tongue. Which makes me wonder, are the contents inside really what he said they are? Why do we want aliens opening it up? Seems suspicious is all I'm saying. Moving on to number 9, tombs of ancient Egypt. While a tomb might not be the first thing you think about when I say time capsule, by definition, time capsules are a historic cache of goods or information, usually intended as a deliberate method of communication with future people and to help future archaeologists, anthropologists, or historians. Which you could argue is all true about ancient tombs, and some of them are terrifying. For example, the tomb of Ankh-Teferi reads on the outside of the tomb, "Any ruler who shall do evil or wickedness to this coffin, may Heman, who's a local deity, not accept any goods he offers, and may his heir not inherit." While the tomb of Kentika reads on the outside, "As for all men who shall enter this my tomb impure, there will be judgment. An end shall be made for him. I shall seize his neck like a bird. I shall cast the fear of myself into him." So yeah, a little spooky. Let's just hope they aren't actually cursed as well. Coming in at number 8, Box in the Woods. According to a now deleted Reddit account, several years ago, a man using his metal detector in the woods came across a time capsule. He excitedly opened it up, but soon found some disturbing items inside, like a teddy bear, clothes, photos, a camera, and a girl's Pee-wee softball medal from 2003. It looked like the belongings of a young girl, but soon people began to speculate, or rather worry, that the capsule could have been more of a trophy case of some unknown killer. Now, if true, it's thought they wanted to hold on to these mementos, and they've chosen the forest as the secluded spot where nobody would find it. And apparently, police investigated the situation, but concluded that the items were probably innocent memorabilia left as a time capsule by their owner. And let's just hope that is the truth. Next up at number 7, a hospital. On July 23rd, 2015, a demolition crew working on the grounds of the former Central State Hospital unearthed a time capsule buried on July 23rd, 1958, in the cornerstone of the Barr Treatment Center building. Now, first off, you have to admit it's a little creepy that this capsule was unearthed exactly 57 years to the day. Like, that just seems a little too coincidental not to be a little creepy. And the creepiness only continues. Inside was a video message to the future from doctors who worked there. Initially, experts were really excited to hear what the message would say, but were disappointed to find that most of the audio had degraded over the years. However, there were some bits and pieces that survived. One man asks, "How well do you think we've solved the problems of the future?" before audio cuts out and only comes back in for us to hear electroshock treatment, as it is today. They then ask if insulin shock therapy has returned, among a few other explanations of the hospital grounds, until finally we hear them say, "When the psychiatrists of the future open this time capsule, only they will be able to tell how well we've solved our treatment problems." Except we don't know what they were doing to solve the problems and we may never know. Moving on to number 6, a joint time capsule. Back in January of 1968, 2 Japanese companies agreed to create a joint time capsule project in celebration of Japan's World Exposition in 1970. Now, initially it was intended to be buried for 5,000 years, but the upper capsule was opened in the year 2000, and it is intended to be opened every 100 years afterward. Now, much of the contents were cultural artifacts, like art, literature, and music. But the item that was really spooky was the black fingernail of a Hiroshima survivor, which is both fascinating and a little spooky. Now, who's to say if that fingernail will still be around for centuries to come? I mean, they do decompose, but they can take years to do so. But whoever happens upon the black fingernail will, I'm sure, have some questions. Next up at number 5, a World War II capsule. In 2016, a time capsule buried in 1934 fascist Germany by, that army, was found in modern day Poland. What happened was, after the war ended, some European national borders shifted. Falkenberg, the town the capsule was originally buried in, was renamed and actually became a part of northwestern Poland. Apparently, archaeologists had known about this capsule's existence for a number of years, but since the capsule was buried in the building's foundation, it stayed inaccessible until archaeologists who excavated some 20 feet down while avoiding landmines finally extracted it. In the end, the contents were predictable. There were a number of photographs, including some of the leader, along with newspapers, coins, documents pertaining to training centers for assumed future leaders, along with 2 copies of the leader's manifesto. But while it may not have been a shock as to what was found inside, it is still pretty scary considering who this capsule was intended to commemorate. Coming in at number 4, Greg Lee Youngman. In 2016, a demolition crew in Albuquerque, New Mexico discovered a time capsule from 1968 near a former elementary school, and based on the messages discovered inside, some kids of the late 1960s had a pretty creepy vision for the future, especially Greg Lee Youngman. While some letters were sweet and wholesome, the letter that sent a chill down their spine read, "I am dead. I go to Montgomery School. That is the old school name. I was born in 1900. Now I dead. My favorite subject is spooking the police. I play the guitar. In case you don't know what it is a board with strings on them. I am 10 years old. See you later, savages." Signed by a boy named Greg Lee Youngman. I mean, maybe that is just a kid trying to mess with people of the future, but efforts to find Greg have been unsuccessful, which of course has led some people to the conclusion that it really was a letter written by a ghost. Moving on to number 3, J.M. Barrie. The name J.M. Barrie is most often associated with the famed writer of the Peter Pan story. But in 2010, 2 women happened upon an old steamer trunk wrapped in newspapers with the initials J.M. Barrie written on it. Peculiar, they thought. They managed to break its lock with a screwdriver, and inside found a trove of antique books and clothing, and they thought they'd found a time capsule. But shockingly, they also found 2 leather doctor's satchels, each holding a mummified corpse of a little one. Investigations into this strange time capsule tomb began immediately, and initially there was suspicion that the famed writer could have been involved, as there was allegedly a copy of Peter Pan as well as a membership for the Peter Pan Woodland Club Resort. But in the end, it was discovered that the initials actually belonged to a Janet M. Barrie. But still, it was a creepy thing to come across. And some believe it could have been some kind of horrific tribute to the tales of Peter Pan and Neverland, where you never grow up, if you know what I'm saying. Moving on to number 2, Greg Wilkinson's letter. In 1995, a man named Greg Wilkinson wrote a letter detailing what life was like for him and his wife, Rosalind Green, along with a photo from their wedding day, and then hid the letter inside the walls of his home to be found years later by an unsuspecting stranger. The time capsule letter was discovered in 2017 by a tradesman, which was close to his wife's prediction of 2020, although Greg wrote he thought it would be closer to 2060 when it was actually uncovered. That being said, in it there were plenty of wholesome details like how much their house cost, the price of groceries, the new technologies, and that the internet was the big hot thing. But along with the good, there was also some terrifying. At the end of his letter, Greg wrote down predictions for the future, stating that he was doing so with no particular time span in mind. He wrote, "Islam will become the next ideological problem, sparking an equal and opposite reaction, plunging large parts of the globe into a ridiculous holy war, each side believing they are more religious and righteous than the other," later saying that this war will go on for a long time. Now, some have connected this statement as a prediction to the events on September 11th in 2001 and the conflicts that have followed, which is pretty scary to say the least. And last up in our number 1 spot, the freezer. In 2016, a woman in North Carolina thought she had struck an absolute bargain when she bought a freezer from her neighbor for just $30, which her neighbor explained she had been using as a time capsule. Now, I don't know about you, but I would be a little confused as to why a working freezer was being used as a time capsule, but you know, some people are just a little kooky, and I'm sure that the woman chalked it up to that. However, when she brought it home and opened it up, she was horrified to find the human remains of her neighbor's mother in the freezer. In an interview, the buyer said, quote, "She sold me her frozen mother for $30. How do you do something like that?" But even more suspiciously, when the police went to investigate the situation, they found the daughter had already left town, telling the buyer that she was going to West Virginia to visit her mother in a nursing home, even though she knew full well where her mother really was. My question is, did she kill her own mother and flee, or was she just weirdly holding on to her mom? It's scary no matter what.